The sun hung low over Sedona, casting a warm glow on the red rock formations that surrounded us. I had envisioned this vacation as a chance to reconnect with my mother, to escape the mundane rhythm of daily life. A week away from responsibilities and routines felt like a balm for my soul, a time to breathe deeply and find solace in nature's beauty. Yet, beneath the surface of this picturesque setting, an undercurrent of tension simmered between my mother and George, her partner. George had been in our lives for several years now. He was charming in his own way, an easy laugh and a penchant for storytelling that captivated my mother. But there were moments when his eyes would cloud over, revealing a more complex man beneath the surface. I often wondered what lay behind those piercing blue eyes. My mother seemed oblivious to any hint of discord. She was lost in her own world of excitement about this trip. As we settled into the family cabin, its rustic charm enveloped us like a warm embrace. The scent of pine lingered in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of sage from nearby trails. My mother busied herself with unpacking while George offered to run to the local grocery store for supplies. "I'll grab some wine," he said casually, flashing his usual grin. "Make sure it's something nice," my mother replied with a wink. I watched them interact from the corner of my eye, noting how easily they fell into their routine. But something shifted within me as I observed George more closely. There was an allure I hadn't acknowledged before, a magnetic pull that made me question everything I thought I knew about him. It struck me as unsettling. I was drawn to him in ways I couldn't quite understand. Later that evening, we gathered around the small dining table for dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first, filled with laughter and stories from our past vacations, those carefree days when life felt simpler. But as the night wore on, tension seeped into our interactions like an unwelcome guest. "Did you remember to bring the hiking mats?" George asked my mother. "I thought you had them," she replied, her tone sharp enough to cut through the jovial atmosphere. I sensed an unease building between them as they exchanged glances filled with unspoken words. It was then that our eyes met, George's gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. There was something unsettling yet thrilling about that moment. It felt as though we were sharing a secret neither of us could articulate. "Are you okay?" he asked softly after breaking eye contact, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded quickly, unsure how to respond without revealing the turmoil brewing inside me. The evening continued, but I couldn't shake off that moment. The way his eyes held mine lingered long after he looked away. The following day dawned bright and clear. My mother suggested we hike one of Sedona's famous trails, a popular route known for its breathtaking views and vibrant flora. As we set out on our adventure, I tried to push aside thoughts of George's penetrating gaze from last night. The trail wound through towering pines and vibrant wildflowers bursting with color against the backdrop of red rocks rising majestically above us. My mother chattered animatedly about her plans for retirement while George walked slightly ahead of us, his silhouette framed against the sunlit landscape. "Isn't this beautiful?" she exclaimed, pausing to take in the view. "It really is," I agreed absently, stealing glances at George as he stood admiring the scenery ahead. When we reached a clearing overlooking an expansive valley below, my mother settled onto a rock while George began taking pictures with his phone. I wandered slightly off-trail to catch my breath and collect my thoughts amidst nature's splendor. It was then that George approached me quietly, leaving my mother unaware in her own world behind us. "You've got to see this view," he said softly but firmly enough that it drew me back into focus. As I turned towards him, our proximity felt charged, an electric current pulsing between us in stark contrast to the serene landscape surrounding us. He pointed towards a distant formation bathed in golden light but didn't move away when our eyes met again. Instead, he held my gaze longer than necessary. "I never knew you appreciated these things," he remarked lightly, but there was an edge beneath his words, a hint of something deeper lurking just below the surface. "I guess there's always more than meets the eye," I replied cautiously, surprised by how easily those words slipped out amidst such tension. In that fleeting moment alone together on that trail, my heart raced as if it recognized what lay unspoken between us, perhaps even before either of us did fully. The gravity of what could happen if we crossed certain boundaries loomed heavily over me like dark clouds threatening rain on an otherwise clear day. "Emma." My mother's voice rang out suddenly from behind us. She'd noticed our absence and called out with concern lacing her tone. We stepped back from each other instinctively as if caught doing something wrong, though nothing had transpired beyond shared glances and unvoiced emotions hanging thickly in the air around us like fog rolling over hills at dusk. As we made our way back down toward her waiting figure below where she stood tapping her foot impatiently against stone ground, the weight of unacknowledged feelings lingered still within me despite everything else being seemingly normal again now. It all felt so precarious somehow, as if one misstep could lead toward irrevocable change, a path neither George nor I could foresee yet both sensed was inching closer by degrees each passing hour spent together here under these skies painted vivid shades across horizons far beyond what any map could ever contain or promise. That evening as twilight descended upon Sedona once more, I found myself restless, unable to shake off lingering thoughts surrounding what transpired earlier today. And when darkness finally fell outside while inside shadows danced along cabin walls illuminated only by flickering candlelight, the air thickened once more between myself and him despite everyone else being present still. Our gazes met again across dimly lit room, and suddenly all semblance of normalcy shattered completely, leaving only uncertainty hanging heavily overhead like storm clouds gathering silently waiting for thunderous release. As the evening wore on, I found myself retreating to the quiet of my room, yearning for solitude. The cabin felt smaller with each passing moment, the walls closing in as my thoughts spiraled. I had come to Sedona seeking peace, but instead, I was tangled in a web of emotions that threatened to suffocate me. The gentle rustle of wind outside mingled with the distant sounds of laughter from my mother and George. Their voices carried through the thin walls, a reminder of the normalcy I craved but could not grasp. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wooden floorboards, trying to suppress the memories of our earlier encounter. The way George looked at me today had ignited something within me, something both thrilling and terrifying. I tried to focus on mundane thoughts, dinner plans, our hiking itinerary for tomorrow. But every time I closed my eyes, his gaze pierced through my defenses. I shook my head as if to dispel his image, but it lingered like an unwelcome guest. Suddenly, a soft knock broke through my reverie. It was George, standing awkwardly at the doorframe. "Hey," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the chaos inside me. "Can I come in?" He hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The air thickened around us as he closed the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" My heart raced as he approached slowly. "I just wanted to check on you," he said softly. "You seemed distant during dinner." I forced a smile. "Just tired." He took another step closer, and I could see concern etched across his face. "Emma, about earlier," his words trailed off as he searched for something to say that wouldn't shatter the fragile atmosphere between us. "I don't want to talk about it," I interjected sharply before softening my tone. "Not now." He nodded slowly but didn't move away. Instead, he lingered near me like an uninvited shadow that refused to fade. The silence stretched between us until it became palpable. It wrapped around us like a cocoon. "Sometimes," he began hesitantly, "it's easier not to talk." His admission struck a chord within me. My mind raced with thoughts of what lay beneath his calm exterior, what fears and regrets haunted him just as they haunted me. "Easier isn't always better," I replied quietly. George sighed deeply and looked away for a moment before returning his gaze to mine. "I've made mistakes in my life," he confessed suddenly, vulnerability shining through his usually composed demeanor. "Things that still haunt me." What kind of mistakes? I asked cautiously. He hesitated before speaking again. When things fell apart with my first wife. It changed everything for me. His expression darkened momentarily as if recalling painful memories that were better left buried. I felt an unexpected wave of empathy wash over me. There was more beneath George's surface than met the eye. A man grappling with loss and regret, the realization tugged at something deep within me. "I'm sorry," I murmured, unsure how else to respond. "It's okay," he said softly, but then added with a hint of seriousness in his tone, "but it does make it hard for me to be around you sometimes." "Why?" My heart raced anew at those words. He stepped closer again. Our breaths mingled in the small space between us, a charged silence enveloping us both like an electric current ready to ignite. "Because you remind me of everything I shouldn't want," he admitted quietly. My pulse quickened further at that confession. It was both exhilarating and frightening all at once. In that moment of shared vulnerability, something shifted between us, an invisible thread pulled taut by unspoken desires and fears alike. Then suddenly, and without thinking, I leaned forward slightly. Perhaps it was instinct or desperation, but whatever it was led us into uncharted territory where reason held no sway anymore. We kissed. The world outside faded completely as everything else melted away, leaving just him and me suspended in time amidst our tangled emotions and conflicting desires. It felt wrong yet right all at once, a collision of longing and guilt that threatened to consume us both entirely. But just as quickly as it began, reality crashed back down around us like thunder after lightning strikes, shocking us back into clarity before we could fully grasp what we had done together amidst this whirlwind of confusion surrounding our lives. "What have we done?" I whispered breathlessly after pulling away slightly. Panic coursed through every fiber of my being now that clarity returned with alarming speed. "I don't know," George replied almost helplessly. Regret flickered across his features like shadows cast by flickering candlelight, our secret laid bare yet still untouched by anyone else's scrutiny or judgment for now. We stood there together in silence, caught between what we had crossed into and what lay ahead. "I should go." He turned abruptly toward the door, a sense of urgency propelling him forward even though part of him lingered behind reluctantly, as if torn between two worlds, one filled with responsibility and commitment while another beckoned seductively from beyond reach. My heart sank watching him leave. Each step away felt like losing a part of myself forever, a haunting reminder that choices would soon have consequences far beyond this fleeting moment shared between two souls yearning for connection amidst chaos. As night deepened outside, the stars twinkling overhead like distant promises forgotten, I sat alone once more on the edge of my bed, lost in thought about what tomorrow might bring, and whether any semblance of normalcy could ever return after this pivotal moment had irrevocably altered everything we knew. As dawn broke, the warm light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I lay there, tangled in a web of conflicting emotions. The kiss lingered on my lips like a forbidden secret, echoing in my mind as I tried to process what had happened. George had awakened something inside me that I thought was long buried beneath layers of responsibility and familial duty. I could hear my mother moving about in the kitchen, humming softly to herself. Her presence was a stark reminder of the delicate balance we were trying to maintain, a facade that felt more precarious with each passing moment. The thought of her finding out about George and me sent shivers down my spine. After a few moments of internal struggle, I forced myself to get up. I needed to face the day, but dread loomed over me like a storm cloud. As I stepped into the living area, I found George sitting at the table, sipping coffee and staring out at the breathtaking red rocks that surrounded our cabin. His expression was contemplative, almost troubled. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound casual while my heart raced. My mother entered shortly after, her cheerful demeanor filling the space like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Who wants pancakes?" she called out, her voice brightening the atmosphere. I exchanged a glance with George. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of our shared secret. The weight of our actions pressed heavily against my chest as we both nodded in response to her question. As breakfast unfolded, I struggled to engage in conversation while my mind drifted back to last night's events. Every laugh from my mother felt like a reminder of what was at stake, my family's trust and stability hanging by a thread. "Emma?" My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. "Yes?" I asked if you'd like to join us for a hike later. She smiled warmly at me. "Oh, sure," I stammered, forcing a smile back at her. George looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race again. We both knew that being alone together on those trails might lead us down paths we weren't ready to explore fully. After breakfast, I took some time alone outside on the porch, hoping fresh air would clear my mind. The beauty of Sedona was undeniable. Vivid colors painted across the landscape made it seem almost surreal. Yet even this picturesque scene couldn't drown out my inner turmoil. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find George approaching cautiously. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. "About what?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "About last night, about us." His eyes searched mine for understanding. "I don't know if we should," I replied hesitantly, glancing back toward the cabin where my mother was busy cleaning up after breakfast. "We can't keep pretending nothing happened." His tone was earnest yet tinged with urgency. The tension between us crackled in the air as I weighed his words carefully. "What do you want from me?" "I just want you to know that you're not alone in this," he said quietly. "I've been struggling too." His confession caught me off guard. It opened a door to vulnerability that felt both inviting and terrifying. "Struggling how?" George took a deep breath before speaking again. "I've had relationships before, ones that didn't work out because I never let anyone in fully." He paused, looking away toward the horizon before meeting my gaze again with sincerity etched on his face. "You make me want to change that." The honesty in his words stirred something deep within me, a longing for connection beyond mere physical attraction. But guilt twisted in my gut like an iron coil. How could I indulge these feelings when it could unravel everything? "I'm not sure this is right," I murmured finally, feeling overwhelmed by conflicting desires and responsibilities. Before he could respond further, an unexpected commotion erupted from inside the cabin, my mother's voice raised as she called for us both urgently. The tension shattered instantly as we turned toward the sound. Whatever was happening demanded our attention now more than our private conversation did. "What is it?" George asked as we moved quickly toward the entrance together. Inside, chaos reigned as kitchen utensils lay scattered across the floor and flour dust filled the air like smoke from a fire gone awry. My mother stood amidst it all looking flustered but also strangely amused at her own mishap. An overturned bag of flour had exploded everywhere during her attempt to bake cookies for later today's family gathering. "Oh dear," she exclaimed when she saw us enter. Laughter bubbled up despite her frustration at having made such a mess. "Looks like breakfast is going to be followed by some cleaning." We all pitched in without hesitation, the absurdity of our situation breaking any lingering tension between George and me momentarily as we worked side by side with laughter echoing off walls smeared with flour dust. As we cleaned up together amidst playful banter and shared smiles, the earlier weight on my heart began lifting just slightly. The absurdity of life bringing unexpected moments even amid turmoil felt refreshing somehow. But then came another twist. While wiping down surfaces with paper towels beside George, our hands brushed against one another unintentionally. A spark ignited within me once more, a reminder of what lay beneath all this chaos waiting just beneath surface level. In that fleeting moment where our fingers met, I found myself drawn closer toward him instinctively. It felt electric yet wrong all at once, as if time froze around us while everything else blurred away into insignificance. Our lips met briefly before either of us could process what had happened, a quick brush against one another fueled by raw emotion rather than calculated intention, but enough for both fear and exhilaration coursing through veins simultaneously now. Emma. George. Come help. My mother's call broke through reality once more, the urgent tone snapping us back into focus as we pulled apart quickly, guilt flooding back into place where exhilaration had just thrived moments prior. The rest of the day unfolded chaotically, laughter mingled with tension as we navigated chores together, all while avoiding eye contact whenever possible after those stolen moments earlier. Yet amidst it all lingered an unspoken understanding between us now, a bond forged deeper through shared secrets, even if neither dared acknowledge it aloud just yet. As the evening settled over Sedona, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the red rocks. Emma stood on the porch of the family cabin, her heart racing as she replayed the events of the day. The laughter from inside mingled with her turbulent thoughts, creating a cacophony of emotions that left her feeling disoriented. George had been so close, their shared moments lingering in her mind like a haunting melody. Inside, her mother was bustling about, preparing dinner while chatting animatedly with George. Emma could hear snippets of their conversation, light and carefree, but all she could think about was how different things felt now. That kiss had changed everything between her and George. She leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath as she tried to ground herself in reality. Emma. Are you coming in? Her mother's voice broke through her reverie. Yeah, just a minute. Emma called back, forcing a smile onto her face as she stepped inside. The warmth from the kitchen enveloped her, but it did little to ease the chill running down her spine. She joined them at the table, where plates were piled high with food. Help yourself, George said with a smile that sent another rush of heat through her cheeks. She nodded and served herself, trying to focus on anything but him. Their conversations flowed around her, stories from childhood, plans for tomorrow's hike, but Emma couldn't shake off the weight of what lay beneath it all. The tension crackled between them like static electricity, every glance felt charged with unspoken words and desires. Later that night, after dinner had turned into dessert and laughter filled every corner of the cabin, Emma found herself drawn outside again. She needed air, she needed space to think without being suffocated by guilt and longing. George followed her out, his presence both comforting and alarming. You okay? He asked softly as they stood side by side on the porch. Just needed some fresh air, Emma replied carefully. The stars twinkled above them like distant diamonds scattered across velvet darkness. Beautiful night, he said, looking up at the sky before turning his gaze to her. You know. What? She prompted when he hesitated. I've never felt this way before, he confessed quietly. Not since I met your mother. Emma's heart raced at his admission. It was both exhilarating and terrifying to hear him articulate what they both felt but hadn't dared speak aloud until now. We shouldn't, this is wrong, she managed to say even as part of her wanted to deny it entirely. I know, he replied solemnly, taking a step closer. But it doesn't change how I feel. The air thickened with tension as they stood there in silence, each heartbeat echoed louder than before. It was then that Emma made a choice, one that would alter everything between them forever. We spent the night together, she whispered finally, breaking their silence as if saying it aloud made it more real than ever before. The confession hung heavily between them like an unbreakable bond forged in secrecy and desire, a bond neither could ignore any longer despite knowing its potential consequences. I want to be honest with you, George said suddenly, breaking through their moment of intimacy with gravity in his voice. But I don't want to hurt anyone. Emma swallowed hard at his words. They resonated deeply within her own fears of betrayal against not only her mother but also against herself for allowing this connection to grow unchecked. I don't want to hurt anyone either, she admitted reluctantly. But I can't pretend this isn't happening. They lingered outside for what felt like hours, lost in conversation about everything and nothing at once, until finally retreating back inside just before midnight when fatigue began creeping into their bones. The next morning dawned bright and promising. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating every corner of their shared space filled with remnants from last night's discussions, the weighty truths they'd exchanged still hanging palpably in the air around them. Emma joined her mother in preparing breakfast while trying desperately not to let on how tumultuous things truly were beneath surface-level smiles exchanged over pancakes slathered generously with syrup, a facade they both wore expertly despite knowing cracks had begun forming beneath it all. "Are you excited for today's hike?" her mother asked cheerfully while flipping pancakes on an old cast-iron skillet that had seen better days but still held memories within its worn surface. "Yeah, should be fun," Emma replied vaguely, even though dread settled deep within as tension built like an impending storm cloud looming just overhead, threatening chaos at any moment if not managed carefully enough. George arrived shortly after breakfast, ready for adventure, his energy infectious yet tinged with an undercurrent of anxiety that mirrored Emma's own feelings perfectly. A reflection of their shared secret hanging heavily over each interaction they had throughout their hike along winding trails leading into breathtaking vistas surrounding them everywhere they turned, the beauty starkly contrasting against turmoil brewing inside each heart present among them today. As midday approached during their hike through vibrant landscapes bursting forth life all around them, a family friend unexpectedly appeared alongside another couple hiking nearby who happened upon this picturesque scene unfolding before their eyes, their arrival sending shockwaves rippling through Emma's already unsettled mind since secrets began unraveling faster than anticipated. "Hey! What are you guys doing out here?" the friend called out cheerfully, waving enthusiastically towards them while oblivious to underlying tensions simmering beneath surface-level pleasantries exchanged amongst this gathering crowd now forming unexpectedly around them. Emma forced a smile while exchanging quick glances back towards George, whose expression mirrored hers perfectly. Anxiety etched across his features, signaling unspoken fears shared silently between two people caught up amidst complexities far beyond simple outdoor adventures enjoyed together once upon a time long ago before complications arose threatening everything familiar once taken for granted. Their interactions continued throughout lunch, in laughter punctuated by awkward silences filled only by unspoken words lingering just beyond reach, threatening exposure at any moment should someone dare ask deeper questions, revealing truths buried too deeply beneath layers built over years spent together, navigating familial ties forged strong yet fragile enough now teetering precariously close edge brink collapse should one misstep occur. Later that evening, after returning home exhausted from long day spent outdoors filled with beautiful landscapes juxtaposed against emotional turmoil bubbling just beneath surface, it wasn't long until reality crashed down upon everyone present when Emma's mother inadvertently stumbled upon telltale signs left behind from earlier rendezvous shared secretly behind closed doors, hidden away from prying eyes searching desperately uncover truth lurking underneath facade maintained so carefully until now. "What is going on here?" her mother's voice rang out sharply, cutting through air, thickened tension palpable enough slice open hearts, exposed raw emotions laid bare without protection anymore, shielding anyone involved anymore from consequences soon following suit, inevitably spiraling downward, fast toward inevitable fallout awaiting everyone involved once truth finally emerged unmasked, revealing hidden layers obscured long enough become comfortable living within shadows cast darkly over lives intertwined tightly together, yet threatened unraveling completely should anyone dare expose reality lurking just beneath surface-level interactions maintained thus far, successfully keeping secrets safe hidden away until now. The air in the cabin felt heavier that evening, thick with unspoken words and a tension that seemed to pulse like a living thing. I sat at the dinner table, my hands wrapped around the cool ceramic of my mug, watching my mother and George exchange glances filled with meaning. Their laughter felt forced, a thin veneer over the cracks that had started to appear in our family dynamic. "Emma, are you going to join us for the hike tomorrow?" my mother asked, her voice cheerful yet strained. She was trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but I could see the worry etched on her face. "Sure," I replied, forcing a smile. I'll be there. My mind was elsewhere, tangled in thoughts of George and our secret moments. Each time I thought of him, a pang of guilt would stab at me, but there was also an undeniable thrill that came with it. As dinner progressed, I noticed George's gaze linger on me longer than it should have. It felt electric and dangerous, igniting something deep within me that I struggled to suppress. But then my mother would laugh at something he said or touch his arm lightly as she leaned in to hear him better. The juxtaposition of their affection against my own hidden feelings created a knot in my stomach. "What do you think about the festival tomorrow night?" George asked, breaking through my thoughts. "I think it'll be fun," I responded absently. The festival promised vibrant colors and lively music, but all I could think about was how to navigate this tangled web we were weaving. My mother nodded enthusiastically. "I can't wait. It'll be nice to see everyone from town again." Her excitement felt genuine. She was blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just beneath the surface. As we finished dinner and cleared the table together, I caught George's eye again. This time he didn't look away. Instead, he stepped closer as we rinsed dishes side by side. "I need to talk to you," he whispered just loud enough for me to hear over the clatter of plates. My heart raced as I nodded slightly, knowing full well what he wanted to discuss, our secret rendezvous and what they meant moving forward. But before I could respond, my mother called out from the living room. "Emma, can you help me find that old photo album?" I sighed inwardly. The moment slipped away like sand through my fingers as I turned toward her voice. "Coming." The evening dragged on with small talk and laughter echoing off the walls while inside me churned a storm of confusion and fear about what lay ahead. My mother flipped through pages filled with memories while George stood close by, his presence both comforting and unnerving at once. When bedtime finally arrived, I retreated to my room feeling exhausted from holding everything inside. The walls felt too close, as if they were closing in on me with every passing moment spent hiding from reality. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every glance exchanged between George and me throughout dinner, the way his eyes had sparkled when he looked at me versus how they softened when he interacted with my mother. It was maddeningly complicated. Just after midnight, there was a soft knock on my door that sent jolts through me like electricity coursing through wires ready to spark a fire. "It's me," came George's voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door wide enough for him to slip inside quietly. The dim light from outside cast shadows across his features as he stood just inside the threshold, looking uncertain yet determined at once. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted softly, as if confessing something monumental. "Neither could I replied cautiously while closing the door behind him. It felt like sealing away our secrets even tighter than before. He stepped closer again until our breaths mingled in the small space between us, a space filled with unfulfilled desires and unsaid words hanging heavily around us both. "Emma," he paused, searching for the right words as if they were elusive creatures darting just out of reach in his mind. "What are we doing?" "I don't know," I whispered back, feeling suddenly vulnerable under his intense gaze that seemed to pierce right through me into places no one else had ever seen before. Places where fear mixed freely with longing, creating an intoxicating blend hard to resist despite knowing its dangers all too well. George took another step forward, so there was barely any distance left between us now. It felt like standing on an edge, ready to leap into an abyss without knowing what awaited below, darkness or light. "What if," his voice trailed off again, leaving so much unsaid hanging thickly between us like smoke after fireworks had exploded above celebrating joy while we stood here contemplating ruin instead. "We can't keep doing this," I finally managed, though it sounded weak even as it left my lips tasting bitter. A reminder of everything we risked losing should anyone discover our secret connection, built upon shaky foundations, threatening collapse under pressure soon enough unless one of us took action now. Just then footsteps echoed down the hallway, followed by another knock, this time harder, more insistent than before, sending chills racing down both our spines, simultaneously reminding us how precarious this situation truly was. "Emma, are you awake?" My mother's voice broke through our fragile moment, shattering whatever illusion we'd managed to create only moments earlier into fragments scattered across reality far beyond repair now. "We need to talk tomorrow morning," George murmured urgently before stepping back toward the door, instinctively aware of how precarious our situation had become, within seconds turning everything upside down once more, leaving nothing but uncertainty lingering heavily around us both. The door creaked open just enough for him to slip out quietly before disappearing into shadows cast by moonlight filtering through windows, framing this entire scene like some tragic play unfolding right before our eyes, without mercy or reprieve, leaving behind only echoes reverberating off walls surrounding hearts, battered, bruised, raw, exposed, now stripped bare, laid open wide, inviting scrutiny without protection anymore. As dawn approached, casting pale light across familiar landscapes outside, reflecting beauty unmarred by chaos swirling within, I knew today would bring challenges unlike any faced thus far, threatening everything dear held tightly onto until now. The sun had barely risen, casting soft hues of pink and gold across the red rocks of Sedona. I stood on the porch, staring into the distance, trying to gather my thoughts. The morning air was crisp, yet it felt heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. My heart raced as I thought about George and the way he had looked at me just hours before, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and uncertainty. "Emma?" My mother's voice broke through my reverie. She stepped out onto the porch, her hair tousled from sleep, a warm cup of coffee cradled in her hands. "Are you all right? You seem distant." "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than genuine cheer. I turned my gaze back to the horizon, focusing on the beauty of the landscape rather than the chaos brewing in my heart. "Let's go for a hike today," she suggested, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "I think it would do us good to spend some time outdoors." "Sure," I managed to say, though dread settled in my stomach at the thought of being alone with George again. The weight of our last encounter loomed over me like an impending storm. As we prepared for the hike, I caught sight of George through the window. He was packing his backpack with meticulous care, his brow furrowed in concentration. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel drawn to him again, despite all that had happened between us. The memory of our secret moments flashed through my mind, each one a reminder of how dangerously close we had become. "Emma?" He stepped out onto the porch beside me, his presence sending an electric jolt through my body. "Are you ready?" I nodded silently, feeling as if I were walking toward an inevitable confrontation with fate itself. The trail wound its way up into the hills surrounding our cabin, each step echoing my internal struggle. As we hiked in silence, I could sense George's eyes on me frequently. The tension between us crackled like static electricity in the air, it was palpable and unnerving. "Is everything okay?" he finally asked when we paused at a lookout point overlooking a vast expanse of red rock formations bathed in sunlight. "Yeah," I said too quickly again. "Just thinking." "About us?" His voice was low but steady. I turned away from him and focused on the view instead, an attempt to escape from both his question and our reality. "We can't keep doing this," I confessed quietly after a long pause. "What do you mean?" His tone shifted slightly, there was an edge now that hadn't been there before. Whatever this is between us." My heart raced as I spoke those words aloud for what felt like the first time. "It's not right." George stepped closer, his expression earnest yet conflicted. "But Emma, what we have is real." I shook my head firmly but found myself caught in his gaze once more. Those deep-set eyes reflected something raw and vulnerable that tugged at my heartstrings, something that made it hard to breathe under their weight. "We need to be careful," I warned softly. He took a step back as if stung by my words but quickly regained composure. "I know your mother suspects something." At that moment, Dread washed over me anew as memories flooded back, how she had looked at us during dinner last night. Her brows furrowed with concern and confusion mingling together like storm clouds gathering overhead before unleashing their fury upon unsuspecting ground below. "I can't let this ruin everything," I murmured more to myself than to him. George reached out tentatively as if wanting to bridge some invisible gap between us but hesitated before withdrawing his hand again, the unspoken words hanging heavily between us now like bated breath waiting for release from suffocating silence surrounding our shared secret. "We should head back," I finally said after what felt like an eternity standing there suspended between desire and duty, a precarious balance threatening to tip either way at any moment without warning or mercy for those caught within its grasp. The descent was steep, each step felt heavier than before as if gravity itself conspired against me, against us, and every passing glance exchanged ignited flames beneath layers of restraint desperately trying not to catch fire amidst rising tensions swirling around our family unit already fraying it seems unseen until now. When we returned home later that afternoon still wrapped up within ourselves yet surrounded by familiar voices echoing laughter across rooms filled with warmth, my mother cooking while humming softly, it became clear how fragile everything truly was beneath surface appearances masking deeper fissures threatening imminent collapse at slightest touch. Dinner passed uneasily. Laughter rang hollow amidst polite conversations attempting normalcy where none existed anymore beneath layers carefully constructed over years now cracking under pressure from hidden truths yearning for light even while darkness loomed overhead readying itself for inevitable fallout sure to follow once revealed. Later that evening after dishes were cleared away and remnants of familial warmth lingered like ghosts haunting corners left untouched by time, I found myself wandering outside into cool night air seeking solace beneath stars shimmering above illuminating paths ahead illuminated only by flickering hopes clinging desperately onto fading dreams while shadows danced around edges beckoning forth inevitable reckoning soon approaching. Just then, I caught sight once more of George standing near cabin door watching me closely, a mixture of emotions playing across his features reflecting uncertainty mirrored within myself too. What lay ahead remained uncertain yet undeniable pull drew me toward him despite all warnings echoing loudly within mind reminding me consequences awaited should any further steps be taken down roads paved with desires forbidden. As if sensing this moment hanging precariously upon precipice poised readying itself for plunge into depths unknown, he took a step forward breaking silence wrapping arms around tightly pulling closer until breaths mingled together lost amidst swirling thoughts racing faster than hearts beating wildly trapped inside chests full yearning still tethered tightly within bounds held fast by love misplaced. But just then, a flicker caught attention, turning sharply toward porch lights illuminating figure standing there watching intently. My mother stood frozen observing all unfolding before her eyes wide open filled disbelief intermingled with dawning realization settling heavily upon shoulders already burdened beneath weight carried far too long alone without support offered freely even when needed most. In that instant, it became clear, everything would change irrevocably from here on out leaving behind shattered bonds struggling against tides surging forth threatening engulfment unless confronted head-on without hesitation anymore. The silence stretched painfully as my mother stood there, the weight of the moment pressing down on all of us. Her eyes darted between George and me, searching for answers that neither of us could provide. The air crackled with unspoken words, each second feeling like an eternity as I grappled with the reality of being caught. "Emma?" My mother's voice trembled, a mixture of confusion and hurt. It pierced through the tension like a shard of glass. "What's going on?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. The truth felt too raw, too exposed under her gaze. George shifted awkwardly beside me, his expression a blend of regret and fear. I could sense his desire to protect me from the fallout, but it was too late for that now. "Mom," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean for what to happen," she shot back, anger flaring in her tone. "That you'd betray me? That you'd let this man into your life in such a way?" Her words cut deep, each syllable laced with accusation. George took a step closer to me, as if trying to shield me from her wrath. "Please," he interjected softly, "let's talk about this calmly." But calm was nowhere in sight. My mother's face flushed with emotion, hurt mingled with disbelief, and it was clear that the facade we had all been maintaining had shattered beyond repair. "I can't believe this," she said slowly, each word dripping with disappointment. "After everything I've done for you both, and this is how you repay me?" "Mom," I pleaded again, desperate to make her understand that this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about something more complicated than I could articulate right now. But before I could continue, George spoke up again. "We need to be honest with each other," he urged gently. "Emma and I?" "Don't." My mother interrupted sharply, raising her hand as if to physically block his words from reaching her ears. "I don't want to hear any more excuses or justifications." The tension hung thick in the air as we stood there in silence once more, each of us trapped in our own thoughts amidst the chaos we had created together. "I thought you were happy," she finally whispered, her voice breaking slightly at the end. At that moment, something inside me shifted irrevocably, guilt washed over me like a cold wave crashing against the shore. The love and loyalty I had always felt towards my mother collided violently with my feelings for George, a man who had become so much more than just my mother's partner during this trip. "I am happy," I found myself saying before thinking better of it. "But things have changed." "Changed?" My mother echoed incredulously. "You think this is happiness? This is betrayal. You've ruined everything." "No," I exclaimed suddenly, frustration bubbling over within me. "You don't understand. It isn't black and white like you think it is." Her eyes narrowed as she processed my words. Perhaps she saw an inkling of truth buried beneath my emotional turmoil. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. I hesitated again. Part of me wanted to spill everything, the depth of my feelings for George and how they had grown into something profound during our time together, but another part screamed at me not to reveal too much. "It means," I began tentatively but faltered when faced with her piercing gaze once more. "Just say it." My mother urged impatiently. "It means that George isn't just your partner anymore, he means something different to me." The admission hung heavily between us like a dark cloud threatening rain. George looked at me wide-eyed as if he hadn't expected those words from my lips either. "I never wanted this," he murmured softly after an agonizing pause filled only by our collective breaths echoing through the cabin walls. My heart sank further at his admission because deep down I knew he meant it, yet here we were, caught in a web spun from choices made outside our control. "I can't believe this is happening," my mother said finally, shaking her head slowly as if trying to dispel the reality around us. A sudden thought struck me then: what would happen next? What consequences would follow once these truths were laid bare? The family vacation we had envisioned was now nothing more than ashes scattered across a landscape once vibrant and full of promise. "We need time apart," she said abruptly after several moments filled only by heavy silence punctuated by deep breaths taken too quickly under stress. "What?" George asked incredulously while glancing at both of us in disbelief as if unable to process what was happening before him. My mother took a step back from us both, her body language signaling finality, as though she were closing off any chance for reconciliation or understanding between us moving forward. "This isn't just about you two anymore," she continued resolutely while wiping away tears threatening to spill forth from her eyes unbidden despite their best efforts at holding them back still lingering just beneath surface tension waiting patiently until released fully into open air surrounding us all now, heavy laden with regret swirling around like thick fog enveloping everything nearby obscuring vision entirely until clarity returned once again someday eventually hopefully soon enough. "Perhaps. We'll talk later," she added quietly before turning away from us, completely retreating into shadows cast by dim porch lights flickering softly overhead, illuminating nothing but emptiness left behind instead where warmth once thrived amidst laughter shared freely without hesitation. Amongst family members gathered close together, enjoying moments spent together without fear looming overhead, waiting patiently ready strike when least expected. As those final words echoed hauntingly through empty spaces between us, a chill settled deep within my bones, leaving behind traces, remnants lingering long after departure occurred, leaving only questions unanswered swirling endlessly inside restless minds yearning desperately seek resolution, find peace somewhere hidden beneath layers buried underneath rubble created by choices made recklessly without thought consideration given beforehand. George turned toward me, then searching for some semblance comfort, reassurance, yet knowing full well neither existed anymore, not here, not now. "What do we do?" he asked quietly, breaking silence enveloping us both completely, wrapping tightly around hearts pounding wildly within, chests racing faster than thoughts could catch up, struggling keep pace alongside emotions running rampant, spiraling out control, unable contain any longer. "I don't know," was all I could offer him in response, feeling utterly lost adrift upon turbulent seas tossed mercilessly about without anchor grounding, holding firm steady against storms raging fiercely outside while chaos reigned supreme inside, hearts torn apart struggling find way back home, safe harbor amidst wreckage left behind scattered everywhere surrounding us, both engulfed darkness threatening swallow whole, consume entirely, leaving nothing behind except echoes, memories faded slowly, fading away into nothingness, eventually forgotten forevermore. The silence stretched uncomfortably between us, thick with unspoken words and the weight of what had just transpired. George's eyes searched mine, filled with a mix of fear and hope. My heart raced, each beat echoing the turmoil inside me. The cabin felt smaller, the walls closing in as if they were witnesses to our transgression. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he murmured, breaking the stillness. His voice was barely above a whisper, laden with regret. The flicker of the fireplace cast shadows that danced around us, mirroring the chaos in my mind. "I didn't either," I replied, my voice shaky. "But it did." We stood there, two people caught in a web of choices that now threatened to unravel everything we held dear. I glanced toward the door, half expecting my mother to walk in at any moment and shatter this fragile moment we had created. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. "What do we do now?" George asked again, his brow furrowing as he stepped closer. The warmth radiating from him was both comforting and dangerous. It beckoned me to step further into the abyss. "We need to talk to her," I said finally, though doubt crept into my mind like a thief in the night. "She deserves to know." George shook his head slowly. "Do you really think that's a good idea? It could destroy everything." "Everything is already broken," I countered fiercely, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "We can't keep hiding." The truth hung between us like an unsheathed sword, sharp and deadly. My heart pounded as I considered what lay ahead: confrontation, heartbreak, and perhaps even liberation from this tangled web we had woven together. "Emma," George's voice softened as he reached for my hand. "What if she doesn't understand? What if she blames you?" I pulled away slightly, feeling the sting of his words like a slap across my face. "I can't live with this secret anymore," I confessed, my voice rising with emotion. "It's suffocating me." His expression shifted as he took a step back, uncertainty etched across his features. "Then let's think about it first," he urged gently. "We don't have to rush." But rushing felt like all I could do. Time wasn't on our side anymore. The longer we waited, the deeper our deception would sink its roots into our lives until it became impossible to uproot. "I can't pretend," I said firmly, determination coursing through me like wildfire. Just then, a sound outside caught my attention, a rustling followed by footsteps approaching the door. Panic surged within me as I exchanged wide-eyed glances with George. We both knew who it was before she even entered. My mother stepped through the threshold with an armful of firewood and an expression that shifted from confusion to alarm when she saw us standing so close together in the dim light of the cabin. "What's going on here?" Her voice cut through me like ice water. I opened my mouth to speak but found no words would come out. Every possible explanation felt inadequate against her shocked gaze. "Mom," George began hesitantly but faltered under her piercing stare. "Don't mom me. What are you two doing?" She dropped the wood onto the floor with a loud thud that echoed ominously in the small space. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what had to come next. All those moments spent hiding behind closed doors flashed before me. Each kiss shared in secret now felt like chains binding us both tightly together yet threatening to pull us apart at any moment. "Mom," I finally managed to say, forcing myself forward despite every instinct telling me to retreat instead. This was no longer just about George or me, it was about her too. The woman who had raised me amidst love and trust now standing before us shattered by betrayal. "What?" Her eyes were fierce now, hurt mingled with anger, and I knew this wasn't going well already. "We've been involved," I stammered out quickly before fear could seize control again completely over my words once more. The admission tasted bitter on my tongue but necessary nonetheless. The truth laid bare between us like raw flesh exposed under harsh light without any bandage or comfort left behind anymore. "Is this some kind of joke?" Her voice trembled slightly but held an edge sharper than glass shards cutting through air around us all. She couldn't comprehend what lay before her just yet, but soon enough reality would crash upon her like waves against rocks, eroding everything once solid beneath them over time. "No joke." George spoke up finally, his tone firm yet soft enough not to escalate things further. He reached out toward her almost imploringly, but she recoiled as if burned by fire instead of touched by warmth radiating from him, still somehow lingering nearby despite tension crackling thickly around us all. "You're lying." She spat back incredulously, shaking her head almost violently now, her disbelief palpable, filling every crevice within our small cabin until suffocating silence followed closely behind each word spoken aloud, echoing hauntingly throughout empty spaces left behind where love once flourished freely without boundaries drawn between family members meant only for protection against outside forces threatening unity among them all. "We kissed." The admission slipped out so easily from George's lips that even he seemed taken aback by how simply those two words shattered whatever remnants remained holding everything together, still intact at least for now. Her face paled instantly. A mixture of shock and betrayal washed over her features, leaving nothing else visible anymore except raw pain etched deeply into skin, lined by years filled with laughter shared among families gathered together enjoying moments spent outside under sunlit skies, filled laughter ringing out freely, echoing memories long cherished fading slowly away, replaced instead by these new ones emerging unexpectedly, born from darkness lurking beneath surface, waiting patiently until ready strike when least expected, catching unaware those unprepared face consequences following actions taken previously without forethought given beforehand, leading directly towards paths chosen willingly traveled down, leading nowhere good, ultimately ending up lost forevermore, trapped within labyrinthine corridors winding endlessly onward, spiraling downward toward inevitable conclusion reached far too soon, leaving behind nothing except emptiness, devoid meaning once held dear, lost forevermore. The air grew heavy between us as realization settled upon her shoulders like an unbearable weight, pressing down hard, crushing hopes, dreams, aspirations built carefully over years, painstakingly constructed brick by brick, only now crumbling apart, revealing hollow spaces left behind where love once thrived, brightly illuminating lives lived fully without regrets, haunting shadows creeping closer, threatening consume whole entire family unit forged together through trials, tribulations faced boldly, hand in hand, walking forward bravely, facing unknown futures awaiting just beyond horizon, looming ever closer, drawing nearer each passing moment, ticking away relentlessly, reminding everyone present here today there'll be no turning back after crossing line drawn firmly across sand, separating past, present, future, forever changed, irrevocably altered beyond recognition, never able return same again. "What have you done?" Her voice cracked, finally breaking under pressure, building steadily inside, threatening overflow, spilling everywhere, soaking everything surrounding them both, leaving nothing untouched, soaked, thoroughly drenched, sorrowful tears shed silently, falling down cheeks unbidden, flowing freely without restraint, washing away remnants, hope clinging desperately onto edges, remaining intact somehow, still believing things might work out all right despite overwhelming odds stacked high against them all. And then came silence again. A profound quiet filled only by echoes, memories fading swiftly away, leaving nothing tangible behind except pain lingering, heavy atmosphere thickening, suffocating every breath taken, next bringing realization crashing down hard upon hearts once bound tightly together, now frayed, edges beginning unravel, slowly revealing truths long hidden, buried deep within, shadows cast across lives lived intertwined forevermore, entangled destinies fated collide, inevitably leading towards uncertain futures awaiting patiently just beyond sight, looming ever closer, beckoning forth unknown possibilities, waiting patiently ready, embrace whatever comes next, whenever chosen paths diverge, taking unexpected turns, leading somewhere entirely different altogether, perhaps brighter days ahead, full promise, renewal, rebirth, ushering forth change, inevitable transformation occurring right here, right now, unfolding rapidly before eyes, witnessing firsthand consequences, actions taken previously never imagined would lead here today, standing amidst wreckage left behind, scattered everywhere surrounding them, engulfed darkness threatening, swallow whole, consume entirely, leaving nothing behind except echoes, memories faded, slowly fading away into nothingness, eventually forgotten forevermore.